Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to understand somebody, you may ask him, what is the philosophy that underlies your actions? In this sense, Popper wrote a book which in German is titled All Men Are Philosophers. Regarding that each person is unique, their philosophies should differ from one another too. However, in order not to fail in life, their philosophies should have as many relations to the world as possible in common, and should be able to regard the world with the eyes of their fellow men as well, because they also belong to their own being. In spite of their respective uniqueness, all are human beings and insofar have the same intentions. To explain this equality has to be the task of a philosophy of action, which of course should not forget the special quality of each individual. He who is asking himself what the philosophy of his doing is, wants to get a better understanding of himself and to give his life a meaning. It should be clear that the question what the essence of man is has not been the same at all times. It is true that the intention to philosophy has always been to gain self-knowledge and thus self-confidence. For that aim, man first of all had to extract from the fleeting appearances that which is timeless and forever valid. And that is defined as the being, the absolute, the wholeness and the goodness. By thinking these generalities, he became part of the timeless being he amalgamated with his ideas. For him, thinking and being became the same. But on the other side, that meant the elimination of development, life, dynamic, from the concrete phenomena. This other side of his intellectuality became for him his sensuality. However, being himself also part of this sensuality, he split himself in reason and sensuality. Sensuality did not only mean enjoyment, but also labor. To be able to enjoy thinking the beauties of art, the antique Greek had the labor be done by slaves and regarded themselves as masters. Because they are split in reason and sensuality, men differ from animals. Within animals, sensuality and the rules of life form a unity, which you must not separate. Compared with animals, men have to govern their sensuality by reasons. Of course, except for those functions which work instinctively or even unconsciously, as for instance digesting and growing. Animals are reacting only on instinct. That is, they not only cannot think, but therefore also have no sensuality, which has to be governed by reasons. Men can define themselves as thinking and also as sensual beings. For them, phenomena are idle entities as well as sources of manifold irritations. In terms of sensuality, man is dependent on stimuli. In this way, he is a servant. That is, if he is not stimulated and getting impulses, he is bored and will finally fall asleep. He can regard the whole cosmos as master, feeling its will in himself. That is the way the Jews regard the God and themselves as his servants. By splitting into intellect and sensuality, man gains his self-confidence, being on one side a thinker, and on the other side a person with sensual feeling. In so far, a man is a self. He also is condemned to be as self. And that can mean loneliness and deep depression and sensual lack of restraint. According to the faith of East Asians, man will leave the cosmic harmony by thinking and acting on his own authority. Similar conceptions can be found in all religions. In the Bible, it is described as eating from the tree of knowledge, with the consequence of being expelled from paradise. In my book, The Evil Within Us, Phenomenology and Genealogy of the Evil, I try to explain how the evil is an element of emancipation and individualization demonstrated by psychological phenomena with examples from Nazi Germany and the apartheid regime in South Africa. Alongside the growth and spread of Christianity in Europe, antique intellectuality and Jewish eschatology have synthesized. The philosophical God as unmoved mover became God as creator, and the Jewish creative God became also the general being. As a consequence, thinking became more an act of willpower and returned its focus to the sensual phenomena. So the sciences grew out of philosophy. How thinking became willing and the cosmic cycle of reiteration became unilateral, progress-orientated time, I try to explain in the book Space, Time, Progress, Categories of Acting and Globalization. As an effect of returning to sensuality, scientists no longer try to reach higher generalities such as the being, the wholeness, etc., but to reduce phenomena to entities as small as possible called constituents, which enable man to reconstruct the same or other phenomena. Niels Bohr already explained the voluntary character of scientific research, pointing out that physical particles come into existence only during the progress of measurement. Nevertheless, physicians tend to define particles as objective entities. In physics, particles have to be elements of mathematical equations, in which both sides are equal. Therefore, you cannot notice any development. All entities are in a period of time, which is dealt with as a kind of space. That's why Einstein already declared the flux of time to be a sensual illusion. Creativity and freedom of will also cannot be regarded as things. The sciences remain within the traditional philosophical framework of existing being. This orientation is hindering traditional philosophy from thinking about flux of time, creativity and sensuality, and therefore the sciences tend to be deterministic. Schluss?
Hierauf drücken.
Ja, ja.
Ja?
Ja.